Everybody, holiday time. Today we have an amazing person coming on the show today. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff. Her name is Susan Johnson, so I'm going to bring her on. One moment. There she is. Okay. Susan?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. I'm doing great. I'm here in Columbia, Missouri. Where are you at?
I'm in Mexico. We're in the Riviera Maya between Cancun and Tulum.
In the Yucatan.
Yes.
Wow. A lot of
Yeah,
beautiful Mayan culture there.
it is. It's so beautiful. I am wishing it was a little cooler. Like fall is my favorite season. We don't really get fall in Mexico, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
beautiful.
we totally have it here. So the leaves just turned like
Oh,
probably a couple days ago. It's been gorgeous. Lots of fiery colors
I
and
love
these
it.
trees. Yeah, it's really pretty actually. It's more before seasons here than where I grew up. I grew up in Montana and it's
Oh yeah.
a lot more evergreen. So it's either green or it's not, or it's brown. So it's
Right.
one of the beautiful things here in Missouri is the turn of the seasons.
I love that. I feel like we were created for seasons, just like we were like even innately, I feel like different seasons, I find myself doing things like I'm way more in the kitchen, even here when it's sweltering. I'm still in the kitchen more around the fall and winter, and then come spring and summer. I feel like that's kind of how we were created, you know?
Yeah, definitely our reality is all about cycles,
Yeah.
and I think we know in wellness that the cyclical nature of health is a really important thing to recognize and respect. And I think it's no coincidence that your name is Season. So I think we'll talk about that. That's a great
I love
topic
it.
actually. It's something I've wanted to go into. But like let's back up for a section, or for a second. I'd like to introduce you to everybody. So you have a lot of accolades. You have a nonprofit you're doing. You seem to be quite busy.
Yeah.
So if you could just introduce yourself to everybody, like who you are, what do you do, what's this nonprofit all about, and what are your passions in wellness, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Thanks for having me, by the way.
You're
I
welcome.
love collaborating with other wellness professionals, especially, we say wellness and now that term is a little bit overused and abused, but there's a handful of people that I've followed and respected. You guys are one of them. I love what you've created with Sauna
Well,
Space.
we'll make sure to correctly define that today.
Yes,
Like,
good.
what is
Okay.
wellness?
I
But
love
go ahead.
that. So my background is I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I went to school, gosh, over a decade ago. Actually, it was about 14 years ago, and opened a private practice. Was seeing, all kinds of clients. The only client I wouldn't see was cancer. It was really scary. I wasn't familiar with it. And then about a year and a half into my private practice, my 2.5-year-old son was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
And so, I always say he went from breast milk to bone broth. Like I really thought as a mom with my limited knowledge, but I felt like I was much more educated than a lot of my, friends and family. I just thought I had done everything right. So it was really humbling. And all of a sudden, my child, who had never had any type of a medication, anything synthetic in his body, truly, outside of while I was nursing, anything that like if I had gotten frozen yogurt or something, that was probably the worst thing he was getting. Um, and so it was really humbling to be thrown into the conventional medicine system. And I don't know if you know this, but it is a requirement in the United States and Canada that if your child is under 18, they're required by law to go through conventional cancer treatment. You can't choose the therapies and the treatment that you want them to do. And
Wow, I
so
didn't
that
know that.
was incredible. Yeah, it was an incredible realization. It was terrifying, and yet I can say now, 10 years later, he's healthy, and I'll share a little bit more of the in between. But there was a reason that we did, and I'm so thankful for it because now that is my job.
Mhm.
My job is I work really closely with pediatric cancer families, teaching them how to implement nutrition, detox, cleaning up their environment alongside their conventional protocol of chemo, radiation, surgery and all of that. And so we were able to see our son like truly thrive through treatment. He did amazing. If you saw him, if you met him during the 3.5 years of daily chemotherapy, you wouldn't believe me when I told you, oh yeah, he has cancer. Like when we'd have to, take him in and he wanted to do sports. He wanted to do jujitsu and baseball. And we'd sign up on the form. And, one of the things was like any medical concerns. And when I would have to say he has cancer, it was like the weirdest thing because nobody would have believed it because he was healthy and vibrant and active. And I know it was because we were helping his body heal alongside what the oncology team was doing.
Yeah, you have to go more into that. So what exactly were you doing? I think everybody would love to know.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, and especially with kids, is nutrition, right? So but there's a little bit of a caveat. So that was my background. I was trained as a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, really kind of studied the idea of traditional foods, raw dairy and healthy pasture raised animal products, lots of healthy organic fruits and vegetables. And so this is always going to be the foundation of life, and health is what we're choosing with our fork, right? Um, so that was the biggest thing for us right off the bat. And he was almost 3. Thankfully, he wasn't picky because I didn't let him be picky. I mean, as soon as we started feeding him food, we fed him, poached egg, organic eggs, liver, sweet potato, like just we were very intentional with that. So here's what I found though. While we had a really solid grip on nutrition, it was my background. My child, this is all he knew. As I started sharing our story online, just even weeks into our diagnosis, I was sharing on Instagram and sharing in my blog. Like it was my way to process all the incredible emotions that were happening. I would have families reach out to me and they would be like, Susan, my child is on hospice and they're vomiting every hour on the hour. There's no way I'm going to get sauerkraut and bone broth in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like feeling helpless, and realizing that was probably the majority of the kids. If they didn't have a mom that went through school to learn how to feed I mean, it was a completely new thing to them. And if their child's feeling so poorly, the last thing the child wants is bone broth and sauerkraut. So I had to kind of get creative. And at this point, we were introduced to plant medicine. And so I started using essential oils on him, on my son. And I didn't really know what they were doing. I was kind of like just following instruction, but I knew he wasn't throwing up. I knew he wasn't having neuropathy. He wasn't having all these symptoms. And so I was talking to my husband one night and he's like, why don't you just tell these families at least that? And so I would tell the moms like, hey, you give your child, this one mom in particular, let them smell peppermint essential oil when they're feeling nauseous. Just try that. And what I started to notice is if we can meet people where they're at, and most of them weren't in the position to immediately get their child on this like great metabolically healthy diet, we needed to kind of help meet the symptoms and correct the symptoms. And so we started using and recommending these essential oils and different detox modalities, and the kids would start to feel better. And then it gave the mom their power back. And they're like, okay, now I can consider spending time in the kitchen and changing diet. So nutrition, key, a metabolically healthy diet. So really, we didn't keep Kicker. My son's name is Kicker. We didn't keep him in ketosis. He had a blood cancer. And so ketosis isn't, for every child, every person is a little different, but it wasn't as necessary for him to stay in ketosis. But we had him on a really healthy, high fat diet. He got lots of veggies, lots of fruits, but mostly, just lots of fats and protein. We used a lot of essential oils, really to combat the side effects and symptoms and to keep his immune system well. We did sauna therapy. We did hyperbaric oxygen, detox baths, castor oil packs, and then a whole protocol of different supplements that we knew and trusted. We had, and this is the thing, you need a team, right? When you have a diagnosis like this, you trust the conventional team if you have to use that, but you need a team on the other side to support this part. And so we were doing all of this over here and then all of this over here. And yeah, it was an incredible 3.5 year journey. But in those 3.5 years, he wasn't hospitalized outside of scheduled appointments. Like he truly thrived.
Wow, that's just an incredible story. Yeah, it's really interesting how when you share your story, how people come out of the woodwork
Yeah.
and are, joining in. Cancer is one of the top three causes of death
Yeah.
in the U.S. So, and cancer, maybe if we go back to like pre-white flour, pre-widespread use of white sugar, so if we go back more than 300 or 400 years ago, cancer was such a rare phenomenon that doctors would travel a long ways to see like a patient, and now we're where we're at now is it's a totally different situation. There's just an explosion of that, and people wonder uh, why, what's it coming from? What I like to say, and I'd like to have your opinion on it, is I really like what Dr. Ed Grube says, that health is essentially a function of the harmony or disharmony in your internal environment
Yeah.
and your external environment. And it's the pollution that we experience nowadays. The food, it's not, it's in the food, it's in the water, and it's in the things around us. It's all the plastics and petrochemicals and a lot of heavy metals. It's also newer toxins like nanoparticles and EMF, and all these things we just didn't exist. Our biology doesn't have, our biology actually works really well to detox these things, actually everything, but we didn't have these types of exposures, and the more I think people eat standard American diets and live standard American lifestyles, the more this just becomes more and more severe of a problem. But it's such a not just in the context of cancer, but in the context of a lot of other health problems. When people start to take ownership over their food, uh, there's always like this huge shift that happens in people's
Yeah.
lives, and then it leads them into other things. Like for you, it led you into essential oils, into sauna therapy, into hyperbaric, maybe a little light therapy
Yeah.
more recently, and so. Uh, there's all these tools that we have available to us, but most people they're not aware of it. And then once they get into the crisis, they, you know, when you have feelings of fear and anger, your like really effective brain function kind of shuts
Yeah.
down, and then you kind of just listen to whoever you choose and deem as the expert, and it's usually conventional medicine at that point, and then it becomes this it becomes a psychological challenge. Like when you have a child who's not eating real food and they're in a situation where they're sick or something's going on, it's much more challenging to start to introduce natural food
Yeah.
at that point.
It's
But you're an amazing example of doing things totally differently, even from the beginning, even prior to this. Like you're coming into everything with this amazing nutrition background. Can you explain what your what that means to be a functional nutritionist for everybody?
Yeah, so that's kind of the beginning of my journey is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner learns how to use nutrition, detoxification, and environmental changes to support whole body healing. We also learn muscle testing and we learn how to palpate different points on the body
Mm,
to determine areas of need. So when I had my in-person practice, I was able, if somebody came in with some different symptoms, I could palpate their xiphoid process and see if, oh my gosh, your digestive system needs quite a bit of work. So it's functional hands-on as well as just understanding how the body works and that every organ and system is connected. Structure affects function, function affects structure. And then of course I took that and did additional training. I went through the Metabolic Institute that Dr. Nisha Winters founded to become a metabolic trained practitioner, as well as lots of different, diagnostic testing, learning how to interpret and understand labs. So yeah, it's just learning to support the body as a whole. You said something that I thought was really interesting, and this is use the word harmony as you're talking about like what this should look like. And I think what's interesting is to your point, yeah, we thought we did everything right. and our baby still got cancer. And you'd be surprised how many stories similarly with the parents that I work with say something similar. And what I've learned is you are 100%. We have these nanoparticles, we have parasites, we have toxins, we have horrible food, we have all of these things going on. We have mycotoxins in our environments more than ever. We have EMF pollution, all of the different things. And we can, in one way, just be completely terrified. And as you said, just let fear consume us. Or we can learn to live in harmony with it because to a certain extent, we can't completely avoid all of these things.
Yeah.
It's like what I said with nutrition, like what we choose with our fork, we have complete control over. However, the toxicity is coming from all the things in our environment. We can't fully eliminate that. We don't want to live in fear. And I think what I've learned with cancer is when you get cancer, the whole family walks through it and your whole life needs to change forever. It's not just the conventional approach is you get the diagnosis, you ring the bell after they cut, they poison, they burn, they send you on your way and they say good job. And they never addressed you didn't get cancer because you were deficient in chemotherapy,
Yeah.
but they didn't talk about why you got it. And so what I wish people knew is this idea that we can live in harmony even in our toxic environment if we can make choices and control our environment, but also we have
Mhm.
to choose to live differently the rest of our life when we're faced with the diagnosis.
Yeah. And it's certainly challenging to look at things positively when, especially in a situation like you've described, like just in this incredibly intense challenge that y'all faced. And there's always an advantage to see because sometimes that's for people, that's the wake up call to like when you say like you have to live differently the rest of your life. That's not a negative thing. It can be
No.
a very positive thing. Hey, I'm being given an opportunity here to change, to shift my course, to change literally the whole script of my life and shift into a more positive script where I'm healthy and balanced and harmonious, like inside and outside. And 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 that's like for those of you who are not proactively like looking into your health and exploring some of these things, sauna therapy, light therapy, eating real natural food, that's okay. But when the universe is talking to you really loudly, it's time to listen, because it's also an opportunity. Hey, the human body has such a powerful constitution that it can take so much abuse and still perform pretty well. That unfortunately can lead to some laziness,
Yeah.
where like, oh well, I don't, or also the idea that when our bodies get polluted, when we get poisoned, there's a delayed response. Like the top four delayed food allergens. Let's see, eggs, dairy, gluten, and I forget the fourth one.
Corn
But you,
or soy, probably.
yeah, I think maybe corn. So you eat it and it tastes good, and you need to like uh, when you have stomach ache afterwards, you need to be like, where did this come from? So I wanted to bring up actually something because you've talked a lot about bowel and gut health, and I know it's a big focus of what you're doing. I'm about to finish a course with Dr. Henry Ely of the Energetic Health Institute. He's one of the doctors in this conference called Healing for the Ages that we actually just went to and sponsored. And and so I'm taking this Detox 101 course. It's basically a gut cleanse course. And so I've been, one of the assignments, the homework assignments is to read this book called Dr. Jensen's Guide to Better Bowel Care. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It's a fascinating book. This Dr. Jensen studied actually with Dr. Kellogg, who is the inventor of the electric light bath upon which Sauna Spaces technology is based. So Dr. Jensen was born in 1905. I think he's passed away now, but he worked um, he worked as a doctor in the early, in the 30s in the Depression. Worked with Dr. Kellogg quite a bit, and as he was trying to treat people for things for symptoms in any other organ of the body, he kept having this realization that he couldn't fix it correctly if he didn't treat the gut first. And that led to him slowly shifting to just treating the gut. And I wanted to bring this up because you brought it up, and there's this fascinating anatomical connection between the gut and the rest of the body that Dr. Jensen talks about. He calls it the neural arc reflex. But basically, in short, in embryology, when the embryo develops, there's the neural, like the nerve cord that develops, and then the other part is the gut. And then all the organs of the body actually bud out and grow from what becomes the gut. So the gut has a cellular and also a nervous system connection to every organ in the body. And so this concept of neural arc reflex is if you have like a diverticulum, or if you have a problem in one part of your gut, maybe your upper intestine, wherever those nerves connect to into the body, that's where you're going to have a symptom. Maybe you have eczema, maybe you have an autoimmune issue, uh, maybe you have like joint pain, um, and it all comes back to the gut. So I wanted you to expand a little bit on, like, what do you recommend? What are you doing what are you telling people in terms of gut health? Because as I conclude this, I love what Dr. Jensen says. He says the gut is the king of all organs, which is interesting, not the nervous system. It's like the gut. It's the sewer system of the body. And the moment it clogs up, like everything gets polluted and toxic in the body. So like tell us about more about like how you approach gut health.
Oh, it's so huge. It's so foundational. As you were saying that, Dr. Philip P. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was the founding father of psychiatry, modern day psychiatry. And he was coined as saying, the seed of insanity lies in the gut.
Mm,
And he would treat every patient that came through his doors, this is in the 30s, with changing their diet, changing their microbiome, and seeing them walk out cured of their mental
yeah.
health challenges. So you're right. It's everything is housed here. So one of the unfortunate things of conventional medicine, one of many, and again, I have to say, like, I am thankful for it. I had to choose to believe that chemotherapy was playing a role in my son's healing, because to your point, just energetically, like, we have to also learn to be in harmony with what's happening, if we don't have control over it. So conventional medicine, immediately when a child's diagnosed, they start them on this crazy protocol of chemotherapy. In addition to that, they then put them on an antacid
Mm,
as a preventative. In addition to that, they put them on antibiotics for the duration of treatment.
wow.
So my son had chemotherapy every day for 3.5 years. They wanted him on antibiotics every week for those 3.5 years. So these are two things, an antacid and an antibiotic, that are part of standard protocol for kids. It is incredibly devastating to their immune system, to their gut. In fact, what's so backwards is there are studies that even show the antibiotics interfere with the effectiveness of chemo. So
Well,
I won't get into the weeds.
yeah, I'll just interject and add one thing too. I was just watching a Zach Bush podcast, and he was talking about how one round of antibiotics can increase depression and anxiety by an extraordinary amount for the next 12 months, and two rounds has like an even more extraordinary effect.
It's so real. And you see these kids who are a little older, the 10-year-olds, the 16-year-olds, the 17-year-olds, their life is upside down. They understand what's going on. And then you couple that with this toxic treatment and their guts being unhealthy. And yeah, they're depressed. It's devastating. So
So,
knowing this, what we
so
do,
yeah, what did you do for your son? For obviously, there's some microbiome issues with all those antibiotics.
we didn't give it. So we went against medical advice and we chose not to give him the antibiotics. And we understood there was a risk. They tell you that they can develop this specific infection in their lungs, which the research I've done shows that it's more of a fungal parasitic infection that, again, we understand comes from a poor immune system.
Hmm.
And so my husband and I prayed about it, and we were like, you know what? We feel comfortable depending on conventional medicine when we need it, not as a preventative. So we didn't do the antibiotics. I believe that was a huge component to why his immune system was so healthy, why he thrived. We also did not give him the antacids. And to any families listening that has a child going through treatment, the antacid is not required protocol. I would also encourage you to have a discussion with your doctor about considering changing up the antibiotic protocol, which I do believe that within the next 5 years, that will be an archaic part of treatment that they won't do anymore because they realize how devastating it is. So when a child first comes to work with us, one of the first things we do is of course, nutrition can do a lot for their gut. So a lot of moms are like, my kid won't swallow a pill. They won't take a supplement.
Hmm.
Fine.
Yeah.
Let's remove the things that are contributing. So a lot of times it's just taking out the white flour, taking out the white sugar, and populating the gut with fermented foods like pickles, sauerkraut. What does your child like to eat? Let's make it healthy and let's fill their gut back up with some good bacteria. I see somebody asking about raw dairy. For some kids, raw dairy can be so helpful, but even better, fermented raw dairy, like a kefir. Oh
Hmm.
my gosh, you put some kefir it's tart, I will say that. So most kids are like, oof. It's tart kefir, but you add that with some organic berries and maybe a little bit of a frozen banana to sweeten it up. But getting these probiotic rich foods back into their diet. And then we love getting kids on a pre-probiotic if they can. Sometimes we have to open the capsule, mix it into something to get it in their gut. Big fans of bone broth to help kind of heal and seal the mucosal lining of the gut so that those undigested proteins aren't slipping out and causing a reaction in the blood, as you mentioned, or in the skin. The other thing is digestive enzymes. So we just talked about this on one of our calls yesterday where we walk with our families, and one of the moms is like, yeah, she has acid reflux. They're putting her on an antacid. And I had to walk through the entire digestive process and why that's not a lack of acid. That is a lack of acid, not
Ooh,
too much
can
acid.
you? I'd love for you to quickly explain that.
Yeah.
Like when we feel acid reflux, what's actually going on, and what do you feel is the solution?
Yeah. So your gut on a scale of 0 to 14, 14 being alkaline, 0 being acid, you want your duodenum, your gut, to be between 0 and 3. It needs to be super acidic to digest and break down proteins, fats, carbohydrates, to kill off fungus, bacteria,
Hmm.
parasites, and to allow your digestive system to assimilate the nutrients and send them where they need to go. Well, what happens because of antibiotics, because of medication, because of an environment of stress, an environment of maybe mold or lack of just health, you over time start to lose the acidity of your gut. And so what happens when you're eating, the proper process is you start producing salivary enzymes as you're smelling food cook, right? You're producing these salivary enzymes because you're smelling food cook that sends a message down your esophagus to your gut like, hey, let's get the juices and the acid going because we want to prepare the body to digest this. And so all of a sudden your esophagus actually releases some acid to help kind of break the food as it goes down. Well,
Mm.
the problem is this. Most people aren't smelling food cooking. They're eating in their car on the way to work. They're grabbing food at the drive-through. They're microwaving something. They're not sauteing garlic and butter and preparing these nutritious meals, right?
Hmm.
So we're missing some steps, and this is why so many people deal with reflux. We're missing the initial step of those salivary enzymes getting created. So when somebody doesn't have enough acid in the gut, your body knows. Like you said, we were created with such intelligence that your body knows what to do when it's given the right material. So when you're eating a meal and your stomach is like, oh, hell no, there is not enough acid in here to break down that steak or whatever you're eating, your xiphoid process kind of down at the bottom where there's like a little flap that basically lets the food into the stomach, it will sometimes close. It's like, nope, I'm not prepared for this. I'm not prepared for this protein. Well, remember I told you there's a little bit of acid produced
Hmm.
in this part of your digestive system. So you're starting to notice like, oh, I'm getting a little heartburn and this feeling, or maybe when they lay down at night, they notice it because the food has not been fully digested into the stomach because the stomach was like, hard stop, hold on. So what do? We treat with an antacid, which furthers the problem. It alkalizes the gut.
Yeah.
And while it stopped the symptom right here, right, that topically it was like a band-aid on a boo-boo, it didn't address the root cause. And so it's a cycle. So instead, we put somebody on a digestive enzyme that has hydrochloric acid in it to help stimulate the gut, and that will get rid of acid reflux.
Wow, beautifully explained. That's fascinating. That even the esophagus is preparing things by producing.
Yeah.
So the solution is like eat real food and slow down.
Yeah,
Take time, take time to eat. Don't eat on the go, and don't wolf your food down. Sometimes I'm guilty of eating too fast.
same.
Once I sit down, I'm like so hungry already,
Yeah.
right? But slowing down is, the digestive system really wants to process things slowly for sure. There's also an interesting fact from Dr. Jensen's book about bowel transit time. This is a concept I had never really explored until recently. The Supposedly, like, the ideal bowel transit time is between 14 and 22 hours. And Dr. Jensen notes some research where there was a comparison between like English people and this African tribe that had like their, that like 200 milligrams of fiber a day that they were eating, like very high fiber diets, and obviously all natural ancestral living. And their bowel transit time was twice as fast as the people in England. So this idea that, back to what we were talking about before, that if you eat something in the, let's see if we do this math right. If you eat something in the morning for breakfast, then it's probably going to come out the next morning.
Yeah.
And so if you're having symptoms in the evening, don't look at what you just ate. Maybe even look further back. Hey, what did I eat this morning? Like, what's going on there?
So true. I think that's our kind of our quick fix nature is like we aren't willing to kind of take the time to analyze and look at the whole picture of what happened. And you're exactly right. Like or symptoms that could be from what you ate could have been 2 days ago, even depending on how unwell
Yeah.
the person is.
Right, and and also this idea of constant elimination. So what we talk about in terms of sauna and sweating, the the be after the gut, maybe the four ways we detox are the gut, the breath, um, the urine, and the kidneys, and then sweating. And so sweating is something that our ancestors did almost every day, and every human culture on earth has like this sauna tradition, right, where frequent sweating, especially passively when we're not working out, it allows the body to clean itself out in this whole new way, and not just use like the gut as well. But back to the gut, because I really want to honestly would rather focus on this gut health thing, because I think it's something we need to bring light to, and people want to know, like, well, what are the solutions, not beyond just changing our diet. What else can we do? Understanding that the gut is the king of all organs. It's the primary detoxification organ, and we're supposed to eliminate a lot. Like Dr. Jensen talks about eliminating within the first 2 hours of waking, going to the bathroom, number two, and then actually having an elimination after every big meal. And so that some people eat only one meal a day, but that would be at least two bathroom sessions a day. And there's a lot of people out there. I have, I've grown up with them. I also know them, contemporarily. People are not having a bowel movement every day. Some people are only having a bowel movement like once a week. It's crazy to think about that, but how that's a huge red flag, right? Like
Huge.
we should be moving things a lot.
Oh, and doctors will tell parents like, oh, as long as they're having a bowel movement a week. And these are kids getting pumped full of chemotherapy
Mm,
and they have dead tumor waste in their body not being eliminated. And no, you're 100% right. Like a bowel movement, that is part of your detox system. But I have to say, like with the gut, yes, this is foundational. However, if we do want our gut to operate better and we want to take the burden off of our colon, part of our digestive and detox process, we have to support the other things. We have to support the lungs, the skin, and the kidneys. And when I have a family, and sauna therapy is one of the first things we recommend because it's non-invasive, it's comforting, kids enjoy it, and especially yours, the tent, like that's one of our family's favorites because it feels like a teepee and it's comforting, right? And it's something easy they can do.
hmm
But I always caution my families like, hey, before they sauna, I want to make sure, have they had a bowel
Yeah.
movement today? And are their bowels regular? And what we found is that when we can focus on, we have to support, we can't just support gut. We have to support gut, lungs, kidneys, liver, skin, all of it.
Mhm.
So sauna therapy will also help take the burden off the other organs. So, you know, when we have a child that comes in and they have high liver enzymes, which is obviously really common during chemotherapy, when
Okay.
they have high liver enzymes, I don't just support the liver. Of course, yes, we're going to do some things like sauna, like castor oil packs, homeopathic drainage. We'll do things, but we also are going to look at the skin, the kidneys, and the colon and the lungs, because that when one organ's weak, the rest is taking the burden.
Yeah, exactly. They're all absolutely working in concert.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even single that out. It's just my passion right now with this course that
totally.
I'm doing, and it's also something that is it's a great place to think to start out for a lot of people. There's not really
Yeah.
any devices you need to buy. It's all about like looking at what you eat and adding a few things. I wanted to jump back actually because you mentioned something that I'd like you to explain a little more about one of the solutions that you recommended for your son, and I think you're recommending for everybody else too, is a prebiotic probiotic. Can you explain to us a prebiotic being different than a probiotic, and what is this difference, and why do you recommend what you're recommending?
Yeah. So, you know, we have to understand that we're more bacteria. I always say we're more bacteria than we are human, right? And so it's a matter of, if our bacteria is healthy, we're going to thrive. If our bacteria is not healthy, majority, then we're going to suffer. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, I just eat well, I don't need a supplement. And while for very, very, very few select people, that may be true, if you live in the United States and you are exposed to the change of environment and all the things, like, it's hard to believe that you wouldn't need to supplement with certain things. So a prebiotic, probiotic, and now they're talking about postbiotics, they all work synergistically at actually balancing the bacteria that you do have. So I'm actually more of a fan of working with like a spore-based probiotic that is working with the environment in your gut. So a lot of times when we look at like supplements or medications, people are so used to a driver. Let me give you an example.
Hmm.
So if you had constipation, this is unfortunately prescribed to almost every pediatric cancer patient. They put them on Miralax preventatively sometimes. Miralax is forcefully driving the body into a bowel movement. It's forcing the body into a response. When you actually, instead of driving a response, you teach the body to modulate, to do it on its own, you can do that with things like a probiotic bacteria. We don't always have to supplement with different strands. And while that can be necessary, don't get me wrong, the first step that I would encourage people to take is kind of work with your own microbiome and start to teach it to modulate. And you can do that with like a spore-based probiotic. I really like Just Thrive is a brand.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked with them for, gosh, over a decade. And the testimonies that I've had from families, cancer and not, of just the balancing of the gut and the regular bowel movements and less symptoms. So Just Thrive has a pre and a probiotic as well. I believe they now have a post. I would say, do you need both? You could actually just look up prebiotic foods. And if you're eating more of prebiotic foods, like kind of your cruciferous vegetables, fermented vegetables, and then you're supplementing with a probiotic or taking a spore-based biotic, you're now, the way I explained it to my son and how I have my families explain it is, you're going to have more good guys than bad guys. And the more good guys you have in your gut, your army's bigger, and you're going to kill off the bad guys, right? And so they're able to go to fight to work for you. This is why supplementing is key. Is our environment naturally kind of pushes us toward having an imbalance based on our diets, and the toxins. So supplementing. And another interesting thing that I found is, you know, we could do through diagnostic testing. I'm a big fan of test, assess, address. So if you do like a GI map test, you can see where there's bacteria they don't have. Akkermansia. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, a lot of people are really deficient in it.
Really deficient.
And it's a really important one. Yeah, actually, somebody popped in a quick question. So, if we're taking a probiotic, when do we take that? Is that before a meal, empty stomach? Is it with food? What do you recommend?
That's funny. That's like a, I feel like that is with between my colleagues and I, that's a forever, some say this, some say that. So my suggestion is always, always, always done is better than none. Okay. So before you get wrapped up and overwhelmed and like, oh my gosh, one more thing, just get it down, get it in your body. However, if we're looking at best case scenario, I love a probiotic on an empty stomach right before a meal. I feel the same with a digestive enzyme as well. But you will talk to some practitioners who think that you should take it after a meal. So that's why I just say, like, at the end of the day, done is better than none. But I do love recommending taking it on an empty stomach.
On an empty
Um,
stomach, so it can kind of get down there first before like the
before all the food
digestive
and
enzymes and the food.
if you're
Yeah.
like a couple things about probiotics that I would say, if you're on an antibiotic or you've been on antibiotics off and on, like you could look back and go, yeah, me or my kids have been on antibiotics. You definitely need to supplement with Saccharomyces. That's a strand of bacteria that is depleted with antibiotics. So while I said earlier, spore-based probiotics are great because they help teach your gut what it needs to do, but then there's times like we talked about with Akkermansia and Saccharomyces. If you've been on antibiotics, you need to do around like 90 days of that particular bacteria to help repopulate your body with that.
Yeah, this is such good advice. I'd also like to add something in. I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing solutions for constipation. It's one of these, such a common symptom people have. So what I've learned so far in my course, some things I already knew, but some new things are number one, hydration of like clean water, making sure you're drinking enough of like really clean filtered water. You can take magnesium citrate. You can take things like Dr. Group has a product called Oxy Powder, which is a non-absorbed ozonated magnesium oxide, but it helps loosen up the bowels like naturally. And there's a couple other things too, I forget that they recommended, but do you have any particular recommendations beyond just for, changing your diet and starting to eat natural?
Yeah, this is huge. Again, it's a big concern with cancer and the medications that they're giving you. So one of the first solutions that I love for constipation is, like you said, hydration's key. But a castor oil pack over the belly. And then if
Mm.
you can also, in addition to that, use an essential oil that has ginger, fennel, peppermint, a combination of that. I like Digest Zen, which is a blend by a company named doTERRA. If you put a couple drops of that on your hand, your palm, rub it onto the belly, apply the castor oil, like a palm size amount of castor oil. You could do it directly on the belly and then place a heating pad or hot water bottle on top and let it sit there for 30 minutes or so. This is another way to pull toxins out of tissue and to loosen things up.
Hmm,
And then,
interesting. You could almost use your glow light too. When you
yeah,
said
you
that.
totally could actually. And some of our families, because again, we're dealing with kids, they don't want to sit still for very long.
Yeah.
So we'll recommend doing some light therapy over that as well. I
Hmm.
mean, and you could do over if it feels too warm. We always say just do it over the spine, over the back while they're doing their castor oil pack. So that's a really helpful tool. And the other part of that is when we talk about digestion, and I see this with constipation. I think a lot of people, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when people have a poor gut health, poor digestion, things aren't moving as quickly as they want them to be. People start to think they need to go plant-based. And actually what I found is raw vegetables are one of the hardest things on your gut. There is absolutely a time and a place,
No,
but
I absolutely. I think that's the issue a lot of people have is if the gut's not working right, those are the hardest things to digest. And the
yeah.
vegetables, particularly, a really healthy gut has no problem, I think, with those. But I'm good friends with a guy named uh, Benazati. He has a company and a podcast called Metabolic Freedom, and so he's an author and an amazing guy, wellness advocate. And when I was hanging out with him earlier this year, did he used to be very his original brand was Keto Camp, so he's
Oh,
very big into ketosis and monitoring blood glucose levels and getting people to be more metabolically flexible. And he did a 90-day course where he only ate meat, and he tested his microbiome before and after, and his akkermansia levels completely normalized, where he had very little, I think, when he had quite a deficiency when he started, and he had this amazing improvement in his gut health. And Dr. Pompa also talks about that too, like, maybe it's not for everybody, and we live in cycles. It doesn't have to be all the time, but it seems that for a lot of people, a limited course of going meat only or predominantly meat gives the gut a chance to recover and heal and kind of correct these microbiome levels and all these other issues and inflammation that people have in the gut and the leaky gut, and is a great solution for people who are willing to do that, to eat meat.
For sure. And I think the problem with our world right now and with social media and all the polarization is you see these extremes, right? People ask me all the time, I get DMs like, what do you think about the carnivore diet? I am a proponent for following a period of time like you just said. I think the carnivore diet, the idea of it could be so incredible for a short period of time. Vegan diet can be incredible for a short period of time if done right. Do I think they're both ideal for long term? Absolutely not. I think that we get to a point, kind of like you said, where this can help balance things out and gives our digestive system a rest, allows us to kind of restore and reset. But eventually, we're going to need to change things up again. And it's like we started talking about seasons. Like our Paleolithic ancestors weren't, they were
Mm.
eating seasonally and they were eating when they could. They weren't eating all day. They weren't eating like, oh, I'm going to have a packet of nut butter. I mean, the amount of nuts it would take to make nut butter, that wasn't an
Yeah,
option.
yeah.
They were they were gathering and hunting what they could find, and it was seasonal. And so I just think for people that get hung up on some of these fads, and while they may have a time and a place for sure, like you just have to be really cautious and listen to your body too. It's like you said, I think somebody might do amazing on carnivore, and maybe they feel well on carnivore long term. They're as long as they're measuring everything, they're keeping track of their symptoms. Great, but just be intuitive with your body, and the healthier you get your gut, the more intuitive you will be as well, right? So it's just
Mhm.
it's holistic healing brings you to the point where you're going to know when and what you should be
Yeah,
doing and eating.
I'm so glad. Like, I think we have like maybe 10 minutes left. So let's conclude with some of I think we've gotten to the heart of it now. Individuation and intuition.
Yeah.
There is no protocol for everybody. It's always a protocol of one, and it requires that you use your intuition and re-empower yourself and take your power back from all these places that, all of us in the West anyway, like we're told our whole lives, we're giving our power away our whole lives, in
Yeah.
school and as children. And then when we grow up, we all have this gift inside of us, right? We all have this unlimited universe of healing inside of us, and we have the intuitive capacity to know exactly what we need in any single moment, and not just as it applies to food, but as it applies to getting sunshine and how much to sleep and what to eat. And um, the great challenge maybe, but also the great advantage and the solution is, hey, we all have this gift already. It's already built into our DNA. It's all pre-programmed. But we have to remember, I know best what my body needs more than anyone else out there, and there's not a single protocol. We get that too, so much, at Sauna Space with the sauna. People are very left brain about it. Like, what do I do exactly?
Yeah.
Exact amount of time, give me the exact protocol. And how much sauna you do the duration of the session can vary. The number of times can vary, and you can take breaks, and then sometimes you can do it more intensely. You can do it even 2 times a day for some amazing growth hormone benefits. But it needs to vary based on what you need. If you're dehydrated from the night before, you don't sweat as well. It's a constantly moving target that once we start to listen to our bodies and to our intuition, we 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 remember that the answer is already within. What do I need to eat now?
Yeah.
It's going to be different. It's not going to be what season needs to eat, and it may very, very well change. But know and accept and be okay with seasonality. Like you all, it definitely in the wellness world, like there's the carnivores and there's the paleos and all this, there's all this labeling, you know, and all
Yeah.
this, and people have these amazing stories. Yeah, I went on a carnivore diet, or no, I went totally vegan, and you're not going to believe like how I healed myself. And they develop these protocols that unfortunately don't perfectly apply to everybody because everybody's different. That person in that moment, that's what they needed to heal.
Yeah.
And it can't be generalized, but it's a good example of something to maybe consider, something to maybe try.
It's so true. Yeah. It is that innate intelligence. And I think you said we were all born with the conviction of right or wrong, and a conviction of right or wrong when you're in your environment and you're working on healing. And so the quickest way to get back to that innate intelligence is healing and taking that time to focus on how to eat and what to eat and how to start healing your gut. And I would say if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start, kind of like what you started with, take away the white sugar, the white flour. In fact, I just interviewed a chef, a former celebrity chef. He came out with the brand Pluck. Have you heard of it? James
Oh yeah,
Berry. He created,
James. Yeah, I'm good friends with
yeah,
James. Yeah, I met
he's
him
amazing.
in the very beginning.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. I love what he does. I love his product because we want organ meats. We want all our kids to eat the organ meats, and this is a great way to get it in. But we were talking about it, and he said, you know what's amazing is we can actually change the human palate. We can completely change it to eat the way we're supposed to. And the best way to do that is to put somebody on a 2 week, no sugar, no grain diet. So you can have berries, you can have veggies, you can have meat, you can have eggs. They also pull dairy out because for
So
a lot of people, they can't tolerate
so
it.
no
Berries
sugar and no flour of any kind, and maybe
and
no
no
dairy
dairy.
too.
Yep. But you can eat, like, so you have a sweet potato steak and an arugula salad for dinner. For breakfast, you have scrambled eggs, microgreens, and avocado. For lunch, you have, a leftover steak, put on your leftover arugula salad. Like, you guys, we don't have to get complicated with this, but doing that for 2 weeks, he goes, oh my gosh, you can't even imagine the amount of people that their palate changed. They could walk into a restaurant and smell vegetable oil and know immediately this is not going to be good for me. So we can change, and I think the best way to do that is to, yes, I hate, I'm like a lion in a cage. If you tell me I need to do 75 hard or sober October or all these things, it like makes me want to rebel more. I'm like that person. I'm horrible with that. I'm just disciplined in so many areas, but don't put a rule on me.
Yeah,
So I say that with telling you that I know it's hard to like fully restrict something, but that is the quickest way for you to reset is if you could pull out the crap for 2 weeks. And that would include alcohol, of course, but sugars, grains, pull that out for 2 weeks. And I promise you're going to notice a massive difference in your health, and hopefully your palate would be shifted as well.
yeah. And when we improve our health and our inner bioharmony, we increase our awareness. We become much more sensitive in a good way, much more aware. Our intuition increases, our awareness of our highest and best selves, really. Like this being inside that's greater than and sits in this body that has so much power and so much awareness and so much possibility. It just cleaning up, doing something short like you've described it, it gives you the awareness you didn't have before. Yeah, you start to notice things that bother you that you were just, you know, asleep essentially
Right.
towards. So this is all about taking your power back. This was an amazing, honestly, this content's been so good. I'd like to have you on again. I'd
Yeah,
love
I
to
love
talk
that.
more about some stuff. I think you have you're an amazing resource of knowledge and also the experience you've had. It's like with your son, it's so, I think, so inspirational to so many
Thank
people.
you.
So thank you. Yeah, so much. And everybody, I know there's some comments there we didn't get to. We kind of just ran out of time today, but if you've made it this far, uh, you're welcome to use the code SEASON on Sana.space. That will get you a discount, and you can apply that now and whenever. And I'll also mention, since tomorrow is the start of November, that
Yes.
we've decided to have a Black Friday discount all month long. This November, excuse me. So that starts tomorrow, and so you can use the code SEASON if you want to stack on top of that discount. So uh,
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, I'd love to pick your brain some more. We
For
could talk
sure.
so much more about gut health and other things, and maybe a little bit more about your sauna space experience. But
Yeah, I would love. I actually have questions for my a lot of my families, so we should do another one and talk a little bit more about sauna therapy. I'm going to do some stories today and tomorrow because I'm so excited about the sale. And a lot of my families have been waiting to purchase the sauna, and I'm so picky. Real quick before we go, you guys, the
we we
biggest
uh,
thing that people don't
we
realize.
actually have 5 minutes, so let's do a couple sauna questions. Go for it.
Okay, the biggest thing, and I have to actually start a call in about two, but the biggest thing that I have to say about sauna that people don't realize, and I know you obviously do, you buy these saunas that are in these wood, beautiful saunas, and you don't realize that when you're heating that sauna up, you're inhaling the toxins from the glues and from the fake wood. And like this is the biggest problem that I have with my kids that I work with is like we have to limit their toxin exposure. And so the sauna space saunas and even just the light, but the sauna space sauna is there's no chemicals used in creating it. And this was like my biggest aha moment when I found you guys years ago. To
Mm.
be able to have this option where you know there are no chemicals they're being exposed to when that heats up, and then to the low electromagnetic frequency exposure.
Yeah, the EMF shielding is a big thing. It's still not well. I don't like. We're still like the only ones kind of dealing with that. It is a stressor environment, and it's a pernicious thing that's everywhere around. So we've actually done a lot of design. So the panels are magnetically and electrically shielded, and the sauna has a grounding mat which protects you from the wired electricity. And then you can also spring if you want with our optional silver lining, and get this whole silver-based EMF blocking Faraday system that is all grounded too. So in there, you're getting grounding therapy, and you're protecting yourself in this healing space and really allowing your body to get into parasympathetic and to just really get into a healing state. It is a big difference that along with our approach to light therapy, our firelight spectrum, where we're mimicking the sun but without the ultraviolet and the blue, it makes for a really enjoyable experience
Yeah.
that, especially we're talking about minors, as long as they're being supervised, it's a very accessible way to do sauna. It's the fastest way to do sauna. The sweating is super fast, but the experience with the EMF protection and the light therapy is really enjoyable.
Yeah. It is. It's therapeutic. I mean, at all levels. Like but I would love to have this conversation more because I think there's so many misconceptions about sauna and then heat and the light. And so we need to do this again because we need to
Okay,
bring
well,
this
yeah.
information.
Well, there's too much to talk about then, so we're gonna have you on again. So we'll talk about that. We'll get you on as soon as we can. Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Susan, for your time. This has been really illuminating.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So nice to connect with you and we'll chat again soon.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye, you guys.
Bye.